My American friend visited me in New Zealand and we went kayaking with a guide. The guide was fantastic, sharing Maori legends and pointing out wildlife. At the end, my friend pulled the guide aside and tried to give him $50 NZD. The guide, a young laid-back Kiwi, looked confused and said, "Oh, no thanks, mate, it's all good." My friend insisted, "No, you are awesome. You earned this." The guide, getting awkward, replied, "Nah, seriously, my boss pays me. Just write a good review online." My friend spent the car ride home, convinced the guide was being exploited by a tyrannical boss. In a small, family-owned trattoria in Naples, I watched an American tourist get into a heated, one-sided argument with the elderly owner. The tourist saw the coperto cover charge on the bill and assumed it was a mandatory tip. He started yelling, "I decide who gets a tip! You can't force me to tip!" The owner, who spoke no English, just smiled and nodded, thinking he was receiving a compliment. The American got angrier, threw money on the table, short of the full amount, and stormed out shouting, "This is why your economy is failing." I was bartending in a traditional pub in rural Ireland. An American tourist ordered a Guinness, and I served it to him. He then tried to leave a $2 coin on the bar. I pushed it back to him. He pushed it towards me. I pushed it back. This went on a few times until he said, "Take the tip, man." I finally said, "Look, if that coin is still on the bar when I come back, I'm putting it in the charity box for retired greyhounds." He looked so defeated, picked up his coin, and drank his pint in complete silence. An American company sent a manager to our office in Helsinki, Finland. He decided to boost morale by taking the janitorial staff out for lunch. At the end of the meal, he stood up and gave a speech about their hard work, then went to each of them and tried to press a $50 note into their hands as a personal bonus. They were mortified. One of the cleaners, a woman in her 60s, politely refused, explaining they were salaried professionals. The manager later told me, "It's a cultural pride thing. They're too proud to accept handouts. It's sad." I was on a tour of the pyramids in Egypt. An American in our group asked the guide, "What's the appropriate tip for the guy who lets me climb a bit of the pyramid for a photo?" The guide firmly stated, "You are not to climb the pyramid and you are not to pay anyone. They are government employees." Later, I saw the same American discreetly giving money to one of the guards, who then let him scramble up a few blocks. He came back, beaming, "See? A little tip is the universal language for bend the rules." My American cousin was in a taxi in Tokyo. At the end of the ride, the meter read, "Y truck $2,000. He handed the driver Y $3,000 and said, "Keep the change." The driver, a very precise older gentleman, became visibly distressed. He got out a calculator, rechecked the fare, and tried to hand back the exact change. My cousin refused. The driver, thinking there was a communication error, pulled out a translation app on his phone. He typed something and showed it to my cousin. It read, "Sir, you have made a grave financial error." At a cafe in Vienna, an American woman was paying for her coffee and cake. The bill was $8.50. She handed the waiter a $10 note and said, "Make it an even 10. The waiter, being Austrian, gave her a $1.50 coin back. She looked at the coin in her hand and said, "No, I meant for you. Make the total 10. The waiter was confused. "But the total is $8.50. This is your correct change." They went back and forth until she gave up, took her coin and left, muttering about their poor grasp of basic math. I witnessed an American man at a hotel in Singapore berating the concierge. His complaint was that the bellhop had brought his bags to his room, set them down, and left without waiting. He just ran off. How am I supposed to tip him if he doesn't even wait for it? Is he stupid? Send him back up here so I can give him his money. The concierge had to calmly explain that the bellhop had another guest to attend to, and that his salary was not dependent on waiting for tips. A young American backpacker in a hostel in Prague was telling everyone how to travel smart. His advice for restaurants was, you don't have to tip here, so the service is going to suck. What you do is you put the tip money on the table right when you sit down. That way, they see it and know you're an American who will pay for good service. He did this at dinner, and the waiter immediately picked up the money, assuming he was paying for a drink up front. My American boss, visiting our branch in Madrid, was appalled by the concept of a long, relaxed lunch. He was even more appalled by the service. Our waiter has been completely ignoring us for 30 minutes, he fumed. In the States, he'd be fired. He's losing money by not turning this table. He didn't understand that the waiter was intentionally giving us space and that his income for the month would be the same, regardless of how many times he refilled our water. In a clothing store in Stockholm, an American woman was so pleased with the sales assistant who helped her that she tried to tip her at the checkout counter. "This is for you. You were so helpful," she said, trying to hand her 100 kroner. The Swedish assistant looked panicked and said, No, I cannot take that. It is not allowed." The American, thinking the manager was watching, whispered, "Don't worry, I won't tell. Just slip it in your pocket." This made the situation 10 times more awkward for the poor girl. I was on a train from Rome to Florence. The ticket inspector came through the carriage. After he checked an American family's tickets, the father tried to hand him a $5 note. "For being so efficient," he said. The inspector, a uniformed official of the state railway, looked at the man's hand as if it were holding a snake. He just said a sharp, "No," and continued down the aisle without breaking stride, leaving the American father holding the bill in stunned silence. An American tourist in a market in Marrakesh bought a lamp after much haggling. He was so proud of the price he got that he decided to tip the vendor. He gave him an extra 100 dirhams. The vendor, a master haggler, immediately thought, this fool had more money to spend, and started trying to sell him a matching rug, convinced the tip was a sign that the American was an easy mark who wanted to keep shopping. My friend works as a server in Amsterdam. An American customer left a very generous tip in cash. My friend, as per restaurant policy, put it in the shared tip jar. The American saw this and became irate. "Hey, I gave that to you for your service, not for you to share with the lazy cook and the dishwasher. That's not how it works." He actually reached into the jar to try and retrieve the money. At a public hospital in the UK, an American man's elderly mother received excellent care from a nurse. He was so grateful that he tried to tip the nurse. "I know you guys are underpaid in this socialist system, so here's a little something." The nurse was taken aback and explained, "Sir, I'm a medical professional on a salary. Accepting money from patients is against every rule of the NHS. Please, put that away." He thought she was just being modest. I overheard an American couple on a walking tour in Lisbon. The wife said to her husband, "The guide is nice, but he's not very peppy. He's not really working for the tip." The husband replied, "Yeah, it's like they don't get the connection between enthusiasm and income." They were rating the guide's historical lecture as if it were a flair bartending performance, completely missing the point of the service they were paying for. An American student studying in Germany was at a bakery. He bought a pretzel for 1 thaler. He paid with a $5 note and, trying to be smooth, said in broken German, "Stimmt so, keep the change." The baker, a stern-looking woman, gave him back 4 thalers and said in perfect English, "No, it does not. Your change is €4. Do not try to overpay for my bread." He was so embarrassed he couldn't speak. In a spa in Thailand, an American woman received a traditional Thai massage. Afterwards, she tried to tip the tiny elderly masseuse. The woman refused with a Y, a prayer-like gesture. The American insisted, folding the money and trying to put it in the woman's uniform pocket. The masseuse began to look genuinely distressed, as if being offered a tip was a great dishonor to her craft. The American interpreted this as humility. I was at a bar in Melbourne with an American colleague. He ordered a round of drinks and the total was $48. He gave the bartender a $50 note and said, "Call it 50." The bartender gave him back his $2 coin and said, "It's 48, mate." My colleague tried again. "No, you keep it." The bartender, now annoyed, flicked the coin back across the counter and said, "We get paid properly here. I don't need your $2. An American family hired a private chef for their villa in Tuscany. They were amazed by the food. At the end of the week, they tried to give the chef a huge cash tip. The chef, a proud professional, refused. He explained, "My fee is my fee. Your happiness with my food is my bonus." The American father later said, "I don't trust a man who won't take extra money. There's something wrong with him. Maybe the food was poisoned." A tourist from the US in a cafe in Reykjavik, Iceland, asked the barista, "Do you prefer to be tipped in US dollars or krona? I have both." The barista, a young guy with a beard, just stared at him for a second before replying, "I prefer to be paid a fair wage by my employer, so I don't have to rely on the whims of tourists, which I am, so either currency is equally unnecessary." My American roommate in Paris was convinced all service workers were secretly desperate for tips. When we had a plumber come to fix our sink, she waited until he was done and tried to give him $20. The plumber, a burly man in his 50s, looked at the money, then at her, and asked in French, "Is this for a drink?" She nodded enthusiastically. He shrugged, took the money and left. She saw it as a victory for the working class. At a gas station in Norway where you pump your own gas, an American driver went inside to pay. The station was spotless. He told the cashier, "You guys do a great job keeping this place clean. Here's something for you," and put some money on the counter. The Norwegian cashier was utterly bewildered. "Sir, I am just the cashier. The cleaning is automated. Are you trying to tip the robot?" An American on a cruise with mostly European passengers was complaining at the dinner table. "The service staff on this ship is so much better to us Americans. They know we're the only ones who will tip them properly at the end." A German passenger politely informed him that gratuities were automatically added to everyone's bill, and the staff had no idea who was from where. The American refused to believe it. I was working at a hotel front desk in Switzerland. An American guest checked out and told me, "The housekeeping was excellent. Please make sure this gets to the woman who cleaned my room," handing me a sealed envelope with cash. I told him I would give it to the head of housekeeping to be distributed among the entire floor's staff, as is policy. He was furious. "No, it's for her. I want to reward individual performance, not fund a commune." An American tourist in a pub in Manchester, England, was trying to get served at a crowded bar. He held up a $10 note and shouted, "A pint for me and this is for you." The bartender completely ignored him and served 3 other people who were waiting patiently. The American yelled, "Hey, I was trying to tip you." The bartender finally looked at him and said, "And I was trying to serve people in the queue, mate. We're not in Texas." My friend is a tour guide at the Colosseum in Rome. She had an American who, after the tour, said, "Your English is amazing and the tour was great." He then tried to tip her. She politely declined. He insisted, saying, "You have to take it. I'm a history professor back in the States and your facts were all correct. You've earned this." He genuinely believed his validation as a professor gave his tip extra, undeniable weight. An American couple in a fine dining restaurant in Lyon, France, called the sommelier over. They hadn't ordered any wine, but they had a question. "We were just wondering," the man said, "how the tipping works for you. Do you get a piece of the waiter's tip, or do we have to tip you separately?" The sommelier, a man of immense dignity, was speechless for a moment, before calmly explaining that the entire concept did not apply to his profession or country. "I saw an American at a post office in New Zealand trying to tip the postal worker who had just helped him mail a package." "You are so helpful, thank you," he said, sliding a coin across the counter. The postal worker, a government employee, looked at the coin, then at the man, and said with a straight face, "Sir, attempting to bribe a federal agent is a serious offense." The American's face went pale and he snatched the coin back instantly. An American vlogger in South Korea was filming his tipping experiment. He went to a restaurant and left a large tip on the table. The owner came running out after him to return the forgotten money. The vlogger explained it was a tip. The owner was confused. The vlogger then said to his camera, "As you can see, the culture here is so humble, they won't even accept a gift. It's beautiful." He completely misinterpreted confusion as a sign of profound cultural humility. My American aunt was visiting me in the Netherlands. We took a canal boat tour. At the end, she tried to tip the captain. He refused. She then tried to tip the young man who untied the boat from the dock. He also refused. She finally saw a man sweeping the dock and tried to tip him. He was a city employee. She came back to me exasperated. "It's impossible to give anyone extra money in this country. How does anyone get ahead?" At a resort in Fiji, an American guest was talking to one of the local staff members. He said, "I'm going to give you a big tip at the end of the week, so make sure you take good care of me." The Fijian worker, whose culture is based on community and hospitality, was deeply insulted by the implication that his kindness was for sale. The American thought he was building a good rapport, but he was actually creating an awkward and offensive dynamic. An American in a cafe in Budapest, Hungary, saw that a 10% service charge was already included in his bill. He called the waiter over and said, "I see you've already tipped yourself. Good for you. I like your initiative, so I'm going to add another 10% on top for your excellent attitude." He thought he was rewarding the waiter's cleverness, not realizing it was a standard restaurant-wide policy.